Welcome to The Real Build.
You leave this world behind, so live a life you will remember.
Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Bill Reiman, your broker builder. And today I got another amazing guest on the show. His company offers full design landscaping, retaining walls, fencing, patios, mulching, outdoor kitchens, fire pits, ponds, garden bed installations, and tree removal, and more. So we're going to get into that. Since he was 16, he was learning the industry from his father. And I can't wait to hear his story. Sam Zale, welcome to The Real Build. How you doing, brother?
Good. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited.
Yeah, man. I'm like we were talking about before the show started. I'm excited to have you on. I've had people in hardscape. I don't think I've had somebody in landscape. So I'm excited to get into that. You've been doing this for a long time since you were a kid. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a great discussion today for everybody listening. So tune in because if you're looking to hire a landscaper, this is going to be somebody that you're going to want to listen to. So, Sam, before we get started, let's hear about you. So, who is Sam Zale?
Yeah. So to know who Sam Zale is, a lot of that comes back to who my dad is. My dad started the company in 1986 and he grew it. He didn't know anything about business. He was a landscaper. He knew everything to do with building projects and he really grew the company in the 90s. It was a really, really big company. And it kind of died down a little bit as I kind of was finishing high school. And that's about where my story begins. I started kind of just getting in. My dad had me when he was old. He was 43. So I'm the youngest of five. And in that, none of the other kids wanted the company. So when I got out of high school, I'm like, well, I mean, I've always loved doing it. And I started kind of getting more involved. And at the time, the company had dwindled quite a lot. Um, you know, just with his age, he wasn't as ambitious anymore. So I kind of stepped in and, just took all the landscape experience he gave me. They sent me to business school, just a community college, and I started from there. I started to learn business. And, as I said, I am my father's legacy, right? And everything I have goes back to him, and a lot of it really comes back to his faith, right? He put everything back into his faith, and he always just relied on the Lord to help his business. He raised a family of five, and in modern days time with no experience, he should have never been able to have a business that successful. And the Lord really provided. And I like to say that I'm his legacy because it really goes back to the faith that the Lord, was able to provide for him. So for me, like that comes back to that a lot. As far as where we're at now, my father's passed, and I think I grew even more from that. I learned more and more as I grew up, working in the family business. You don't always get to see everything, right? Like you don't understand. And as I've grown more and more, I seen how being such a good steward of the business for the Lord grew the business, right? And in his passing, I seen all of these people. I mean, the church was just filled with people who worked for him, people who had stories of businesses that they started because of his ability to show them what it meant. And so I like to really say that I am his legacy because I'm now relearning who he was because of all of that. And I'm trying to become more like him, because what he really did a good job of is taking in people and teaching them work ethic, teaching them about the Lord. He never pushed it, he just showed his own faith. And I really admire that. And I strive now more and more to be able to live the example that he lived for the employees so that one day I'll have people come up and say, my business is here because of you. And so now with the business, we're growing. The last couple of years have been awesome. We've really done a good job of just bringing in a good team. And it's been super fun. So, as far as business goes, that's a lot of where I come from.
I love it, man. The one I could relate to you a lot as far as, the legacy aspect of it. I am my father's legacy. I love what you said there. Um, there's not a lot of second generation business owners that think like you. And that's why I think, and I look at you too because you weren't handed anything. You obviously started at an early age. You learned the business. Um, I took a lot from what you just said too, because one of the things that stood out too, big time with you is servant leadership. And being a servant leader is what God put us on this earth to do. and
Absolutely.
and that's where you're rising above. I can already tell just right off the bat with what you just said, with becoming more like your dad, and your dad, not knowing a lot of details about him yet, is he sounded like he was a servant leader. He was there to serve. He was there to serve his community. He was there to serve his people and his organization. He was there to serve you as his son. So talk about fulfilling that legacy a little bit too, and its impact on you, the future vision of the business, what you've taken it to since your dad's passed away.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of funny. I kind of learned this more in the funeral that one in his life exemplified it. I never realized where it came from. Is John 10. Jesus calls us to live an abundant life. And his best friend speaking at the funeral talked a lot about how he used to always talk about that. And the really funny thing is the first time I run a young adult group, and the first time I ever got in front of them giving a message, it happened to fall on John 10. And so I actually got to really give my first message and dedicate it a lot to my dad. So, now it comes back to, all right, how do we live that abundant life? And I think that for me, fulfilling that legacy would have to look like living my own abundant life for providing that in others, right? For me now, I have my mom still around, and the business was their retirement. And so I'm striving to make sure she's living an abundant life through the business. And our employees, I have close friends that are in the management with me. We have a life to provide for them. So in my living out John 10 and living an abundant life, whether that be through my faith and in the what I do in the church, and also the stewardship in my business, that to me fulfills his legacy.
I think that's where you stand out too, is what you just said. You're there to, you're not just there for yourself, you're there for your employees, you're there for your mom, you're there for your team in general. And there's a lot of business owners that struggle with that. But I spoke about this actually this past weekend. Um, the power of being a servant leader also involves listening to your people, hearing what their wants and needs are, right? And because your employees want to be heard. And it sounds to me like that's what you're doing. It's not about you, it's about them and how we all can serve, and you're creating leaders within your organization. So I love that about you too, in the fact that being so young, you're 30 years old, you're already realizing this. I mean, at 30 years old, I wasn't even close to realizing that. So good for you. That's amazing, man, because you got a jump start on a lot of other people. But you started young, and it sounds to me like you had a really good role model in your dad too. And there was a discussion yesterday in actually a Bible study group I'm a part of. There's a lot of Arte guys in it, and we were talking about the Ten Commandments and honoring your father and mother and what that means, right? And some of the guys were talking about, not living in regret, because basically take an assessment of how many years do your parents truly have left, that you can
Yeah.
spend that time with them. And that made me really think too, because I've been trying to make an effort more to spend time with my dad. My dad's going to be 75 this year. So how many years does he truly have left? So and my dad's been a big impact on me in my life because he started our business too, similar to you. And yeah, he was hard on me. But he taught me how to work. he taught me, and I was talking to my wife about this the other day. I was like, I would see my dad go to work. He wouldn't come, he wouldn't come home till late. I'd see him come home and he wouldn't sit there and drink. He wouldn't sit there and, just sit on the couch and kick his feet up. He would talk, he'd say, he'd talk to us, play with us, whatever. But then he'd go to bed and he'd do it again. He wasn't just didn't party, didn't do any of that stuff. He just worked. That was my dad, and he instilled a lot of that in me to where it's like I start thinking I'm doing 75 hard now, and the clarity and the mindset because I have a son, I have a 1 year old now, and I'm like, what is he gonna see in me? What's my son gonna see in me? Is he gonna see the same thing I saw in my dad? So I start questioning these things too, as my son's getting older and he's more aware of what his surroundings are, it's like what example am I gonna be? What example am I to my people inside the office too? Am I coming in hungover? Am I doing these things that I shouldn't be doing, or am I coming in the best version of me? So that's a reflection, and that's what I love about what you said right there.
Yeah, and I can echo that for myself as well, seeing in my dad on another note of how he treated my mother. I look back and sometimes I'm jealous of how he was so thoughtful. Yeah, I look back at how thoughtful he was to my mother and the example that he set for me, just knowing that he would always be thinking of her and us. He would be consistently bringing in, on Saturday mornings, he would always have bagels for all of us. He'd have breakfast ready. He would always be getting her flowers. I mean, he got her flowers like 2 times a week. There was never not fresh flowers at that house. And so many more other examples. Those are a couple that just come to mind. And it's just so powerful for me to know that he did all that. And now, as I look for a wife one day, I want to be the same, right? So now I am striving to learn how to do the same.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's it because he's a big, obviously a big impact and example on your life, and it's like we just talked about. It's you want to be that example. You want to set that standard. You want to be the best you can be too. I've talked about this. I've had this discussion with a lot of guys on the show actually too. Just especially when you have kids, it's crazy the impact a child has on you, and that fire that you get to be better, also too, because you weren't always your best version, and now it's like, how can I be that best version? How can I build this company to be its best version? And it's like everything around you too. So I love that about you. And yeah, I know your father's definitely looking down on you, proud of you too, man, because there's not a lot of 30-year-olds with your mindset. So that's awesome too. Let's talk about your company a little bit. What you guys are offering, as far as services too. Like just get into that a little bit and then we'll go into the landscape business in general.
Yeah, yeah. So our company does three different divisions, right? So right now we're in snow season, so that's all we're doing. And then you have landscape services and then landscape install. So snow is it's a bittersweet one. It's not fun work, but it's very good work, right? It's very profitable. But it's hard. It's hard to get this many guys up. We have 30 guys that go out every time we get a plowable event. Waking all of them up every morning is challenging for our managers, but we do pretty well with it. So yeah, snow is fun. It's honestly always been one of my favorite parts of it. It's like you're a little kid playing with big boy toys, all the loaders and everything was always my dream, and we're living it now. So the landscape services is just, your general commercial maintenance. We don't do residential maintenance currently. It's something, down the road we might look at, but we're just servicing HOAs and commercial properties. So that's everything from mowing your lawn to trimming the shrubs, mulching the garden beds, doing the fertilizing for the lawns, all the turf care. So it's all that general scope of work. And then the landscape install is any kind of pretty much around your home, around the commercial buildings, anything that you want to do around there, whether it be putting in a patio or ripping out all of your old landscaping and put a nice new fresh landscape garden beds in with new plantings and just sometimes it's time to refresh it. And that's what we do a lot of. The patio side of it is big. We only have one crew. We don't really love the idea of growing on that side too much. It's a very profitable side, but as this past year with the economy shows, it's when it's not good, it's really not good. Um, so the patios, any kind of outdoor, fire pits, the seating areas, just designing the outdoor living area it's so cool. And we do pretty much anything, whether it be a pool or just a simple 20 by 20 patio. We don't do pools ourselves, but we're partnered with somebody. Yeah.
Do you bring in the actual architect? Do you do the landscape architecture too, or is that something separate that somebody has to provide?
So true landscape architecture, no. We've never gotten in anything that needed a legitimate, architect. But
Mhm.
as far as the designing and planning the project out goes, yes, we do a lot of that in-house. If it's a simpler project, something under 40, $50,000, we'll design that ourselves. But I do have somebody who's a designer. We do a lot of work for him as well. But he does any of our bigger projects that we've done, he's designed it, and he will bring pretty much everything with takeoffs for us, which is huge. That he's not just a 3D designer. He's an actual, you get the construction drawing takeoffs, which that I can bring to get permits if we ever need it. But as far as the engineering side of it goes, we haven't run into anything like that yet.
What I wanted to ask you this because I deal with it a lot. I actually just dealt with it on a house we're building. How do you deal with price-driven people, that obviously they look at your estimate, then they want to go shop around and obviously I always say too, it's not all the time, but it's most of the time you get what you pay for, right?
Mhm.
And you're probably not the most expensive, but you're probably not the cheapest. And I'm the same way with us. How do you sell that value to somebody that is shopping your price in the landscape world? Because I know you battle with because I hear it as a builder, I hear it that, well, you can get a tree from anywhere. What's his tree better than that guy's tree? Or, how's his grass better than the other guy's grass and the other guy's cheaper? So how do you battle with that difference in that aspect of it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the customer experience that we bring.
Okay.
Right off the bat, when somebody calls us, we send them to our website, they fill out a form, and from there, we have a calculator built into our website for them so they can get a rough idea of what they're looking for price-wise. And what happens with that is that immediately gets rid of the people who have outrageous expectations, which is always nice to not have to go to that consultation and then tell them a rough price and they just have it's almost embarrassing to hear them be like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe it would be that much for a patio. Um, so from there, though, as soon as they fill out that form, we immediately are triggered from there to send out our welcome packet. In our welcome packet, we really just list out all of what's going to happen from, the time of consultation through bid acceptance, through planning up to the finished product. And I've just gotten so many people that have complimented us on that alone. And I think that what can be taken away from helping price-driven people is create such a good customer experience that they have to be thinking, why are the other companies not doing this?
Mhm.
So you almost have to convince them to stop thinking about the price because, if they're 100% price driven, they're going to be price driven. And you can, work through a lot of that. And I think a lot of it comes down to following up with them, especially if they are bidding it out and really taking the time away to go back to have another meeting with them and look at your bid along with other bids if they will let you. Because a lot of times I've found that my bid included a lot more, which is usually where the price increase came from. In general, yes, our prices are usually a bit higher than others, but when there's that big price gap, I think a lot of times it's because it's not apples to apples.
Yeah, I love what you said there too about creating such a good customer experience that they don't think about the competition. Because that's what we are as a company too. We're always on a mission to figure out how to do that. Implement new ways, implement new software. Like, what can we do better? I mean, we're already ahead as far as video content, all these different things that we're doing out there, but how can I, get more jobs by over delivering to the client too? Go into your welcome packet a little bit because I think that's a huge, huge thing right there. And I want to talk to you more about that too because I think a lot of contractors would have success with something like that too, just explaining like the process more because a lot of clients don't know what the heck is going on. The majority of them don't. Like they don't know what is happening, what's next, what's the next steps. Like a lot of them haven't done it before or they have and they might have had a bad experience. So it's like, how are you making that experience better? Well, let's start with a welcome packet that delivers everything from start to finish. My experience
Yeah.
with you guys. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it just starts with the consultation. It just gives a brief description of, we're going to meet in person. We're going to go over, what needs to be discussed of the project. It mentions, please have your spouses available because there's nothing worse than meeting with one and then be like, oh, well, let me see what my husband or what, oh, I got to check with the wife. And it's like, well, why, let's just all be there together. That's definitely one of a big thing I hear. So it sets that tone right off the bat, over communication. So from the consultation, the next section of it, it has a little section just about design agreement and pricing. And it does say not every job needs a design, but it does talk about, projects that are larger. They need to have a design and a takeoff, and there's a fee for that. So it sets the tone right there, letting them know that we're gonna have to do that. If they want a big project with, a full size patio with a fire pit, retaining walls, and they're doing the works, I need my guys need to take off when they go to build this. And we're not building that for free. Designs aren't cheap and they're not easy to just throw together. So set the tone right there with that. From there, it talks about, the bid acceptance part and what to expect from there, the time frame, it just gives a rough idea that, most projects are not getting done within the first few weeks that you sign the contract. It's usually going to take at least a month or two. Our schedules are busy and it sets that tone of making sure that you understand the process that it takes for us. It also takes time for us to prep a project. We got to call in the dig survey. We got to order material. And if you have a special product that you wanted to use, that might take longer. And we're not starting a project until we have solidified at least, knowing estimated delivery dates and all of that. So it sets the tone up to there. And then this is my favorite part. It's the ready, set, build part. And it has a picture, I think, of something like messy. And it just talks about how messy it's going to be. We try our best to not be messy, but there's going to be dirt. It's going to be loud. It talks about there's going to be dust in the air, and it just sets that tone. It just tells them, hey, it's going to be messy. And, you know, it's so important to just let them know that. And a lot of people have never had a bigger construction project done like this. Some of these people are first-time home buyers and they've lived in an apartment and haven't had to have construction going on. And yeah, guess what? Our trucks are going to be lined in front of your house. It's going to be busy for a couple weeks. So you really set the tone with that. And then just the final product of, we're going to do a walkthrough with you and we want to just make sure that before we take acceptance of final payment that you're happy, you haven't noticed anything that you weren't happy with. And you're doing that you're trying not to open any doors with that, but you do want to make sure that it's up to their standards, right?
I love that, man. Because you're setting the expectation from the beginning too, which clears out a ton of potential issues of, he said, she said type stuff, and it just, I'm a big believer in that. Like, set it from the beginning, talk about what's going to happen, talk about the outcomes, and then if there is anything along the way, bumps in the road, deal with it head on, and a lot of contractors don't do that, unfortunately, and it puts them in a rough spot too. I hear it all the time. And if you go on like Nextdoor and these community apps and stuff like that, you see it all the time where it's like contractor left my job, I'm left high and dry. Contractor did
Yeah.
this. And it's like it's no matter what portion or what you are as far as contracting, landscaping, painting, whatever, there's so many people out there getting burnt. And one thing that you're doing by presenting, that welcome packet too, is you're telling them this is how your experience is going to go. This is how everything, you're telling them it's going to be loud, it's going to be dirty. And believe it or not, that could be common sense, obvious, or it is common sense, but some people don't understand that. They haven't experienced it, they've never had a full-on landscape renovation where there's going to be dirt where they walk and there might track some into the house. You guys are going to try and clean it up as much as possible before you leave. I'm sure you do, but it turns into a job site. That's the thing. So I
Yeah.
love that. That is so crucial for the people that are listening out there, for the clients looking to do landscaping or hire somebody to. Um, Hopefully they spell out exactly how their process is going to go. One thing that came to my mind too while you're talking, we've experienced cheaper landscaping. Um, and we've had clients that wanted to pay cheaper prices, and then the bushes and everything comes in, and then there's always problems with them. And majority of the time after we leave as the builder, they end up having to hire somebody else, like one of the landscapers we originally recommended at a higher price, to come in, rip it all out, and replace it.
Yeah.
So out to the listener out there that is doing landscaping, or if you're in Sam's neck of the woods, hire Sam, because Sam's going to give you a better product that's going to last. And more than likely, if there is a problem, Sam's going to come back right away and fix it. Versus the cheaper companies probably will not.
Yeah.
So go into that a little bit too, the value there, the difference that you've seen. You don't have to call anybody out, but you can just, I'm sure you deal with it just like I do. So,
Yeah, going back real quick too, I just want to say, the whole like messiness part. My one friend that is actually somewhat in your neck of the woods, he goes another step further. He actually puts door hangers on every door in the neighborhood around the house and
oh,
just says,
well,
"Hey, we're going to be doing work. Letting you know if you have a problem with a truck in the way, like let us know." It's a
good for him.
marketing
Yeah,
idea, and
that's
it's really
awesome,
all
man.
it is. But yeah, so I just figured I threw that out there because we do want to start doing that as well because it's a great idea. Just getting your name again, it's a lot of it's just about getting your name out there. But yeah, no, dealing with the guys that come in cheaper, it's a real thing and it's everywhere. It's no matter what town you decide to start in, so many people say, "Oh man, this market is just not great." You're gonna find that in every market in every town that you go to. You can't run away from your problems. And so, again, it just kind of comes down to standing behind your work. And I think that the word of mouth gets out when you do. We've had plenty of jobs where we've never had major problems, but we've had jobs where we've had to come back and fix things. Um, One of our biggest jobs, I wouldn't say biggest, one of our most favorite jobs was a job on around Nicolet Bay. And it was an insane job. We had to bring like barges in and everything to get it done. It took like 2.5 years to even get the project to be able to happen. And me and the guy basically became friends because we'd been working for so long. And um, we built the whole thing. The whole thing went great. One of the things we added on at the end was just this little sitting wall along his walkway, and it actually separated from the walkway. He texted me and was like, "Hey," he's like, "Figured I'd let you know. I see just a little bit of crack starting," and I was like, "Huh, that's pretty weird." And it was built in a weird spot where it was a big drop off behind it. So we were there within, I think we were there that week, and we pulled back the areas that we needed to, and we reinforced it. We poured some concrete behind it. I think that we genuinely just overlooked how much of a drop off there was behind it, and it just the water took away from it. And he was super cool with it. He's like, yeah, I'm just glad that you guys came out so fast to fix it. And you stand behind your work, that will get around. And he's a high level guy, and I mean, I've already done a couple jobs for people that he's associated with, and they'll continuously spread that. And I
Mm.
think that that's really how you got to beat those guys. You're gonna find it, right? Like you can't beat it because people are always gonna have it in their head that they need to spend less. And
Hmm.
while there's budgets and that's a very real thing, sometimes you have to recognize the value, the cost value analysis, right? That's a huge thing that people miss out on.
I want to go into with you too, as far as like the design side of things too. How do you ensure that your designs are, both functional and they both appeal to people visually too when doing a landscape project? Just so this is a good question for the audience as well. Just because, like I said, a lot of people don't know what to look for when hiring a landscaper. So it's just, let's get into that a little bit too.
Yeah, I think the best thing that, right off the bat, what you can look for in hiring a landscaper is look at their social media. What kind of designs are they putting out? Are they professional or are they just, kind of thrown together? I think the design process is actually one of the more scary parts for me because they're expensive and you're really not getting a lot of value in the sense of, what you can tangibly touch.
Okay.
We're working on right now that's $3,500 design. It's a three-phased project, so it's a decent sized thing. And it's just you have to have a good system with it. You have to really do your background homework, right? Like you can't just call somebody up, make sure they're reputable. Look at their reviews. The guy who does all of our designs, he met me because he did work for my dad in the 90s, and he started his company. He had a huge flourishing company. He ended up bringing it down to where he just wanted to do designs, and he has an incredible amount of background to stories and things that jobs that he's posted, right? So that what he's building is gonna have just some sort of something interesting in it, right? Every job that he does, it's unique. And that's what you want to look for. One of his trademarks is doing a something in the patio, right? Like having an inlay. And that's his trademark. So you want to look for stuff like that. Because he takes pride in the fact that it's unique. Not many people, that project on the bay, he designed that for us. And he has two different inlays where they're just kind of arcs in the patio, but they're connecting also. It's awesome. And I think that that's really where the design side comes down to, because there's a lot of designers out there now.
Hmm.
At one point, the landscape design back in like I'd say 2018, 19 became the coaching of what is now, right? Like everybody wants to be a coach. Everybody wanted to be a designer because you didn't have to actually get out there and build the project. And so you can find anybody to design your project for $500. And you have to look at, well, what are you getting for $500, right? It's not always going to be functional.
Hmm.
And when you have somebody who also used to build the projects, they now are considering how they used to build the projects, right? Like you need that knowledge.
It's interesting that you say that too, because we deal with it here. Like I have a lot of people that, the landscape designers here, obviously they deal with the pool, they deal with the hardscape, then they deal with the landscape as well. They might deal with some of the, like we build on the water, so the dock elements and for the boat and all that. So there is a lot into it, like planners, stuff, structural planners, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of details, but the expense of it too. I mean, you're talking 20,000 for some of these projects just for architecture, which is big price tag after spending money on regular house architecture
Yeah.
and then also engineering architecture. So some people are hesitant to do that. And I get put in a position too where it's like, does your landscaper design? Does he just do it? And I'm like, well, usually most of the time we'll meet with him and we'll walk the site and he has an eye for it. I mean, he knows what should go where and what's going to look best. So we can go that route to save you money. Obviously, he's not a pool designer. Most of the architects here don't design the pools. I mean, they'll put a basic pool down. Um, but there is a lot of value to those architects as well. And we've worked with a few of them, and I have two specific that I always recommend, but it's interesting coming from your perspective that, is it a necessity? No. I mean, is it a good thing because they can put their details and their touches on it? Yes, it probably helps you out in the field too because, my guy that does ours, he labels every plant, the detail of it, where it's going to go. Like it's like you guys can just come out and do your thing. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about, all right, should we put this here? Should this sprinkler go here? Everything is spelled out. So that's the benefit of it. But for those clients that don't want to pay for it, is that a route you recommend they go, is just meeting with somebody like yourself and then you take that vision because you've done it so much?
No, we actually
Okay.
won't build the project.
Okay. Okay.
If we're into anything over 15 to $20,000, I won't build it if there's not a design. There at least has to be a simple 3D design because it's just number one, I don't even know what we're building at that point, right? Like it makes
Yeah.
it difficult how to estimate. How am I estimating that, right? I don't know what you want. And then for me, bringing that into the field to have my guys build it, now I'm relying on them to bring what the customer wants. And while that's not always a terrible thing, because there's a lot of companies out there who, especially more on the hardscape side, they end up saying, they have a reputation where they're left to just build something cool. And that's a whole nother industry.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
the guys who are, that is all they do is the hardscaping. And I applaud those guys because they come up with some of the coolest projects out there, right? But as far as on a large scale project, you really need to have it planned out, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can't, it's like that would be like building your business without a plan, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a plan or else it's just gonna throw you a million curveballs. And then guess what? Now you've lost all your profits because it wasn't efficient. You had to run to the store 20,000 times to grab another sprinkler head and another plant and right? That becomes the biggest pain in the neck that there is. So yeah, no, we just won't build it. If you're gonna cheap out on it like that, because guess what? The design also solidifies that they know what they want, right? You present that to them. They get to see, oh, I really don't like that. I'm not feeling that. We're missing something in this. What are we missing? What can
Yeah.
we try to play around with it a little bit? You want them to know what it's going to look like before they even get to the beginning of construction.
You are right. I mean, it's especially in large projects too. It's very hard for a landscaper to walk a job site and be like, "Yeah, you should put a tree there, tree there." It's just visually, it's hard to hard to do that. And I've had it. I've had it where people, they don't want to pay for landscaping in general, so we just do this code stuff. We do a bunch of grass and a couple trees, and it looks like all hell. But and we build this big beautiful house, but they don't want to spend the money on the landscape because the landscape literally is a huge, huge part of the elements of the exterior of the home,
Yeah.
that draws the eye to certain things. So we have that going right now, and I just cringe every time because they didn't want to spend the money on any landscaping right now. They're waiting to do it later, but it's just crazy. But I agree with you too, because having those elements, and that's how I always push our company too is that we are true turnkey. We have all the resources that you need. We got a great team of people that can help us from start to finish, deliver you a product that literally is you walk in with a suitcase and that's it. And everything blends, even the design team we have too. Yes, it costs more money to do that, but in the long run, it's going to cost you even more money if you don't do it throughout the process too.
So that's actually something that in my industry alone is a huge problem.
Mhm.
You get these awesome pool projects that people want to build, and what happens is they hire a pool company, and then they hire a landscaper, and then they hire somebody to build the patio, and you have all these different pieces that aren't all working together. And I'm sure for you, you've seen the same thing, but I have
Mhm.
my designer who a big part of his plan, and again, we build most of the projects that he designs. So he's become just honestly a mentor for me. And I love his model with this is that he wants to build the design for the whole project, and then he's going to facilitate moving all the moving pieces, right? Okay, we've got this guy, he's going to build the pool. This guy's going to put the patio in. This guy's going to put the plantings in. And he's now able to have a full, from start to finish plan of how it's all going to come down. And while I'm sure there will still be times where, there's a break and somebody's not working on it, you're able to now put a plan together where there's not, okay, pool guy's done. Let's call the hardscaper to put the patio in. Okay, great. We'll be there in 8 weeks when our schedule is free because, there was no heads up, which is a lot of times how it goes. Pool guys, they don't know when they're going to get there usually. And when they get there, they get it in pretty quick, but a lot of times their schedules are so fluctuating on so many things. So you end up with such a disconnect. And I actually just went to a call last fall for a project that they had the pool guy come in and then wanted us to build the patio. And we didn't end up getting the job. And actually, I don't think it's going very well from what I heard. But that was another one of where I noticed, like, man, he's right. Like, that really is a problem.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a huge problem too. And you get what you pay for in the end, man. That's we've said it on this already and I'll say it again because if there's I deal with it on the building side too, where I have a guy now that really amazing lot. He's probably shopping every builder in the area. I know he is for a fact because it's a small area where I'm at and I could find out. But and he's having each one do specific plans for the lot so he can see in whatever one he likes best. That's what he's going to choose. But more than likely, price is going to be a big factor. Whoever gives the
Mhm.
lowest bid wins. And I still email them, I still pitch us, I sell, and I always sell them on the numbers too of who we are. We've been in business 30 years, positives, never been sued for anything in 30 years. Always do things right. Done over 200 homes in the area and very good reputation. We finish our projects when we say we're going to finish them, so on and so on. And, that I don't know if that'll sell them, but you can't win everybody. That's the thing too. And you know that going off of what you were just saying as well. Before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about like maintenance with landscaping, what people should be looking for there, obviously, too. This popped in my head because I just actually talked to one of my clients about zoysia grass versus regular floor time grass, which is what is used in Florida most of the time because it's basically like a weed and it's easier to maintain versus zoysia is a lot harder to maintain and a lot more water. So he's leaning the other direction too, but I told him to talk with the landscaper on that as well. So talk about maintenance a little bit, what people should look for in those elements. Is that important? Is when picking landscaping? What do you think on that?
Yeah, no, I think that the maintenance part obviously is like anything else. You have to keep up with it or else it'll become a overgrown forest, right? So you want to make sure that every year you have somebody who's just going to take care of the shrubs, right? Whether you do it yourself or not. It's not that hard to trim back your shrubs, and making them look nice, but it's also important that if that's something that you're not interested in doing, you have somebody to do it. Same with mulching your garden beds. Mulching, it's helpful actually for weeds and stuff to just keep the fresh mulch. Even if you do it every other year, we always recommend every year, just aesthetically it looks nice. So those are definitely two of like the main pieces. One of the things that we do to all of our commercial sites, and we do a lot of our projects that we install, we'll put it's called Treflon, and it's pre garden bed pre-emergent. It's basically your industrial grade preen, and the more and more you use it, the more acidity it builds up, and the more it kills the seedlings of weeds. So
Mm,
that's always a huge part of the maintenance because everybody complains about weeds. And
mhm.
people love to say, well, just make sure you put the weed barrier down. And I love to educate people with that. And I'm just like, first off, it's not weed barrier. It's call it landscape fabric because it doesn't block weeds. It will block the weeds that are under it, but weeds they come from saplings on trees, and saplings on trees blow through the wind, and they come from the birds dropping poop out of the sky and all these different ways. As soon as you put that fabric down and you put the mulch down, once one of those saplings falls on top of it, a weed's gonna grow. So people always say, well, just make sure that no weeds are going to come up. And I'm like, that's not possible. But here is your system to how you can avoid them as much as possible. But even then, I mean, even my own house, I still get weeds and I put that stuff down 3 times a year. So those are definitely the big things. Your lawn, um, man, is that a controversial thing these days of using fertilizer and all that? That's a preference thing. Obviously, it is nice to have a nice lush green lawn. Um, it is healthier, to just see that green, dark green lawn, especially up here in the Northeast. We have real grass. Um,
Yeah. Soft
um,
crust. Yeah.
but it's also important to hire the right guy just mowing your lawn. Your guy with an SUV and a trailer, he's there to just cut it, right? He's not going to take care of your lawn and stuff. He's just going to get in and get out. You do want to find a reputable company who's going to edge your lawn at a 90 once in a while, along your sidewalks, and that creates a professional look. And the same with just around your trees and so many of those aspects that you really need to recognize the value in that price.
What about selecting plants like that are better, longer longevity, less risk of dying, like stuff like that? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I really do always tell people like just trust me on what I'm putting in,
Yeah.
because I think that there's so many opinions on what plants are going to do what, and a lot of people read into a lot of what Google has to say. And while I think Google is right, I go off of just the plants I know have good success rate. And if they have specific plants, like that's awesome. Like yeah, we'll run with it. I'm going to do my research into whatever plant that is and really make sure it's going to work where you want it. But yeah, we do tell everybody if they're really not sure, I say, well, if it doesn't survive, guess what? I'll be here next spring and we'll replace it with something better, you know? And we really do that you really have to stand against that, or stand for that in your warranty. And that gives them the comfort to understand, especially when they're having a disagreement on a certain plant and placement and all that.
Love it, man. Before we wrap up, I want to get into a couple personal questions with you. I ask everybody on the show. So, this one's probably my favorite because I get a different answer every time. What about you personally? You're building an amazing company that continues to grow each and every day. What lessons have you learned throughout your journey that we should all apply to our own business and lives that will help us grow?
Yeah. Oh man. I think the biggest lesson I learned came from after me and my dad had a big fight, and Ed Milet gave a talk on not being arrogant and that you don't know everything, basically. He talked about it hit me that day of without going into the whole call. It just really hit me that I was 27, right? Like
Hmm.
I thought I knew everything. And over the last 3 years, I've learned so much from that one call. And what was cool is that that was the last fight me and my dad ever had. After that, I just started to really recognize my arrogance and how I needed to. The call was on feedback on negativity and how there's always truth in everything, even if it's negative. And
Mm.
I really took that to heart and realizing that, man, like I am so stubborn and I'm becoming a know-it-all that I had actually stopped learning in the business. And I think it was why my business had gone a little stagnant. And honestly, from that point on, we've been flourishing. So that was honestly one of the, personally, it did so much for my life and it also did a lot for the business.
That's so huge what you said right there. You stopped learning in the business, and then when you kind of step back and you're like, this is affecting me, it's affecting the business, like, and then you opened up your ear to listen and learn, like it pushed your business and exploded the business. And get what I'm getting into is there's a lot of entrepreneurs that struggle with that in general. I was that same way. I mean, 27 years old too. I was probably the same way. I mean, it's just I thought I knew everything, and we all go through those stages in life, but when you get to a mindset that you're just willing to learn and listen to people, and also obviously what you learn you serve with that too, and what you've learned you serve with that. That's how God works. I mean, he's going to give you're going to give and you're going to receive. That's how God works. And the more you give, the more you receive, the more you can give what you learned, like you are today. It's probably going to help somebody, guarantee it. Uh, just you're right off the bat, the show was awesome. You talking about your relationship with your dad and everything and your mindset in general, man, the sky is the limit. So I love that about you too. But amazing stuff. One other question I want to ask you is where do you see yourself in the next 5, 10 years from now? Obviously, I asked about your past. Let's hear about your future.
Yeah, my future is interesting right now because we've actually just started working on a landscape business group where, we talked about that welcome packet. I've helped so many people and somebody was like, "Why aren't you, trying to do this on a little bit bigger scale?" And we're trying to kind of help bring a group of people together where we're helping them implement a lot of stuff like that welcome packet and we're giving it to them, right? And I think it's just really exciting for me because the business is always going to be the business. I love the Zales landscapes and I will never not be a big part of it. But I also love helping people and seeing them grow. So, there's kind of it's kind of cool because what I'm doing with that group, I'm building videos on how to implement these different things that we use at Zales. And what I'm also doing with that is making it so that when I bring in managers, I can have them go through how we do it. So it's kind of a twofold thing. So we're kind of trying to grow Zales with that so that people can see like our systems and processes that we're using are a huge part of our
Mm.
success, which I 100% believe because, we have job packets, we have just all of our Asana processes and all these different things that have really attributed to our success because it creates accountability and it creates the customer experience. So I think, our future is twofold, really helping others while growing the business and having the credibility to show that we have been doing this for as long as we have.
I love it, man. And I'm honored to give you the platform to talk about that too, because what you're doing is huge. You're having a lot of success too, and to be able to mentor people too. I'm big on that. Like, how can I help? That's why I did this show too, and how can I help people and show people what to look for in these industries or even contractors what they should be doing. And like listening to you and your background and what you're doing as a landscaper, it's huge. And there needs to be more people
Yeah.
out there, and hopefully somebody out there listening is going to take the advice. Even by just starting a welcome packet, I mean that's huge. You explained how to do it. I'm sure you'll share it with people too, like you said, but it's been amazing, man. Love what you're doing, and definitely going to check back in with you and have you on again here soon. So, um, where can people find and connect with you, Sam?
Yeah, for just my business, Zales Landscapes is just a simple tag for Facebook and Instagram for our business group where we're, building the systems and processes with people. That's just called the Abundant Landscaper.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. This has been, like I said, amazing as always. And thank you for your time, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. This was awesome. I look forward to checking back in with you in a while.
Awesome, man. And for you guys that are listening, please take the time to share this one. Definitely needs to be shared. So take the time, share it with your friends and family. Appreciate all you guys like, subscribe. You know the routine. 5-star reviews on iTunes goes a long way. And we will see you guys on the next episode.